I've never seen that many police on the campus.
He grabbed my arm, dragged me over, and pinned me against the wall.
Could you please stop grabbing my arm?
The irony seems to be lost on the administration that what they are erecting as these kind of protocols look a lot like Palestine.
What does it mean that hiring a huge number of, security folks, that is a priority while the university is laying off staff?
So you have the perception that you're being followed around by like undercover cops.
She said the SSMU could and should have stopped the strike motion. That is a lie.
This is not democracy.
This isn't really about ensuring student safety, but about silencing Palestinian voices.
I'm standing 100 feet from where the first student encampment in solidarity with Palestine in Canada went up in April 2024. It was part of a movement that saw student encampments at universities around the world. And the McGill encampment in particular drew a lot of attention and media coverage.
This is the McGill encampment.
Thursday marked the 20th day of the pro-Palestinian encampment.
The pro-Palestinian encampment.
After multiple failed injunctions to try to get Montreal police to clear the encampment, the university relied on a private security force, Serco, to do so. The goal of the encampment was to put pressure on McGill to divest from Israel-related funds like weapons manufacturers. McGill's endowment fund, valued at $2.1 billion in 2024, is used to invest in dozens of companies with ties to Israel, including weapons manufacturers like Thales, Safran, Airbus, which develops drones that are used in Gaza, Lockheed Martin, the world's biggest arms producer, which supplies the IDF with weapons like the Hellfire 9X missile, which was reportedly used in the bombing of hospitals in Gaza, and Dassault Aviation. The university invests over $5.5 million in these 5 companies that supply Israel's military. Numerous experts have said that Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip amount to a genocide. We spoke to a protester who took part in the encampment, who asked to remain anonymous out of concern for retribution or academic repercussions.
This wonderful way of educating each other and learning how to work together, the incredible rallies and supports that we would have, like educational workshops, cultural events. It was like this beautiful kind of taking back of this space and making it a space that felt really welcoming and felt really joyous.
McGill administration claimed that overdoses and syringes were observed at the encampment, but student protesters deny those allegations. We were not able to independently corroborate the university's claims.
Yeah, to me, that actually really showed how powerful we were as a group and as a community, because they were doing everything they could to make us seem scary, to make us seem unapproachable.
The encampment was dismantled on July 10th, but the student movement for Palestine did not die down. This past school year saw students organizing and diversifying tactics. Strikes, divestment votes, lawsuits, and investigations have raised the tensions between students and their university administrations at McGill and Concordia. As these tactics are met with backlash, observers worry about the implications for student democracy and academic freedom. So, what's happened on campus this year? In December 2023, students independently brought forward a motion to the SSMU called the Policy Against Genocide in Palestine, PAGEP for short. It called for the university's divestment from institutions and corporations benefiting from Israel's war and apartheid system, and for an end to disciplinary proceedings for student protesters. It was blocked for a little while because of an injunction.
Exactly. So there was an injunction that was brought by B'nai B'rith, which is a pro-Zionist organization, and this basically stopped the policy from being adopted.
The SSMU appealed the injunction and won.
But more importantly, they said that, in line with case law, the role of the courts, the role of the tribunals is not to interfere with the democratically adopted results of a student association, and affirmed that actually we do have the agency to take this policy, and in doing so pretty much struck down every single argument that was brought.
The policy against genocide in Palestine was ratified by McGill undergraduate students, but similar motions presented at the Postgraduate Student Society could not get that far. It's a bit complicated and took place over the course of multiple meetings, but essentially what happened is PGSS members passed pro-Palestinian motions that were then the subject of a lawsuit brought by a student with the help of B'nai B'rith. McGill administration provided modifications to the motion, which students told us rendered it essentially meaningless. Then, last fall, when students tried again to pass a pro-Palestine motion, a Quebec judge threw it out because it contravened an agreement that the PGSS had previously entered into, saying that it would not adopt or ratify certain motions. We spoke to Andrew Karkner, a former PGSS counselor, who told us he's concerned about what this situation means for student democracy.
I mean, it's very troubling. I mean, something that's really important to keep in mind is half of graduate students at McGill are international students. So they have no representation in the provincial government, in the federal government. PGSS is their only political representation. So when it's not possible for them to even discuss political topics in PGSS meetings, I think this is not democracy.
At Concordia this year, students held a BDS vote to demand that the university divest academically and financially from Israel, as well as from weapons manufacturers fueling its war. To get to the vote, a petition had to get enough signatures to be brought to the CSU to organize a special general meeting, which was done and set for January 29th.
Just honestly really hoping we'd hit quorum. And on the day itself, we had 1,000 students show up. So many students were there that we actually had to set up an overflow space in the moment, scrambling, and campus security actually helped us to get chairs and set up that space, but then we were later sanctioned for using it.
The vote passed, which mandated student representatives present the demands at Concordia's Board of Governors meeting. When they did, on February 6th, as students protested outside, it was declared out of order for not following proper procedure. Concordia has launched an investigation into the CSU's special general meeting when the vote was held, alleging it violated several regulations. We reached out to Concordia for an interview, but a spokesperson declined, saying that the university won't comment on an ongoing investigation. Ballantyne and the CSU contest the allegations.
The success of the motion itself, in terms of having like 885 students vote in favor and 58 against, means that we've really been given a very clear message from the student body of what they're looking for us to do as student representatives. And that is that they want us to continue lobbying the admin. So we'll keep doing that.
80,000 students went on strike in Quebec last year to protest Israel's war in Gaza, except McGill students who were unable to pass a strike motion because of litigation at the time. This past year, students were able to present a strike motion to the Student Society of McGill University, which passed. Undergraduates were on strike from April 2nd to April 4th. As a result, McGill administration moved to cut its memorandum of agreement with the Student Society, sending the two parties into mediation.
The attack on SMU is unprecedented. I mean, we've seen a lot of administrations go to extreme lengths, but threatening to cut ties with their student union because of a fully democratic strike is, shows to what extent McGill is willing to go to repress the student movement.
That's actually what the interim deputy provost, Angela Campbell, said in her public message when announcing that the university had severed its ties or wanted to initiate proceedings to sever its ties with the SSMU following the events of the strike. She said the SSMU could and should have stopped the strike motion. That is a lie, and it must be called out as such because, frankly, we've received a never-ending onslaught of different forms of crackdowns, and it's about time that we said truth to power in this way.
We reached out to McGill to request an interview, but a spokesperson declined. We then asked what specific part of the SSMU's governing documents would force it to throw out the strike motion, but we did not receive clarification. We were not able to identify any binding portion of the governing documents which could apply.
They threatened this, after the strike had ended, even after the SSMU had released these condemnatory statements, basically saying like some of the things that are happening are not affiliated with the strike, they're not mandated, we're not a part of them, and if students are being intimidated, we don't support that. These policies and the strike motion passed because thousands of people showed up and turned out to vote for them. If people wanted to vote for something to the alternative, people wanted to vote for something relating to Zionism or something, they're allowed to use the same platforms if they want. Where we are standing right now, we saw riot cops, we saw mounted police, And we saw drones. McGill claims that they were not involved in that action, or they didn't tell them to come, etc., but they certainly did not tell them to leave. And it caused a massive issue for students who were trying to leave and felt intimidated, even though no protest happened, just student democracy.
So I, for one, don't feel safe having more police or security on my campus. What I've noticed is one thing is a lot of the security guards don't wear uniforms. So this is kind of, especially those from these private security firms, many of them are also young, so they're kind of like student aged, right? So they kind of blend in with students. So you have the perception and the kind of feeling that you're being followed around by like undercover cops, right? I mean, it's a bit what they do because they're also encouraged to surveil. It's part of their job is to surveil. They have cell phones and they film us, and they can do this without any, they don't seem to have any guidelines of what they are and are not allowed to do. I mean, maybe they do, but we don't see those. If you approach them and ask sort of what are you doing and why are you filming me or why you're filming students, they refuse to answer. They, some wear uniforms, some don't wear uniforms. Those who don't wear uniforms have little armbands, but they often keep them in their pockets. So, you can ask them, but it takes like a long conversation to get them to take their armbands out of their pockets. I've had that experience myself. So you have like on campus a really disturbing kind of situation that is antithetical to what we do, which is the free exchange of ideas, debate, standing up for different kind of positions, discussing, but also feeling like that we can do that in an environment that is open to all of us.
We've seen increased security presence on campus here in McGill, especially this last semester. What has been the impact on students, particularly students who are in support of Palestine, when they come to campus, having this increased presence?
Students are very committed to this cause, and a few security guards is not what has stopped the student body from continuing to respond to the aggressions on our people in Gaza or to organize this strike and these protests. I think it's just ironic that McGill administration claims to support freedom of speech and academic freedom and respect the rights of Muslim and Palestinian students on campus when they are the ones bringing private security on their campus to surveil and monitor and follow students around, creating a very unsafe space.
I've been to a lot of demonstrations on campus. I've witnessed a lot of the demonstrations where they call police. I've never seen that many police on the campus. There were so many police on the campus, on horses, on bicycles, the riot police, the arrest buses. Like, it was so disproportionate to what was happening. And then we got the email, another one of these big emails I wanted to everybody, that on Friday you would have to show your ID to go into buildings. So I wasn't on campus on the Friday. So I didn't experience it myself, but I talked to other colleagues and people that you had to show your ID to go into a building. So there were some, people were talking and sharing stories of some things that just feel just so disproportionate to what was happening. Like these long lines outside of buildings to go in and like study or teach your class, or like 4 guards like outside of a classroom that had like 5 students in it, or right, there were like people who were sharing these different kinds of stories. The irony seems to be lost on the administration that what they are erecting as these kind of protocols look a lot like Palestine. So a young man who I know in the community came to campus and said to me, this looks like where I grew up in the West Bank. Like, that was his visceral reaction to seeing all of this securitization and the long lines and the kind of checkpoint style on McGill campus. And like, this is exactly what the students are fighting against, right? They're fighting against an apartheid system in Palestine. They're fighting against this kind of like people being treated unequally and the kind of the apparatus that gets put in place when you oppress people. And that's exactly what we're seeing now in this kind of very mini form on our campus, and it seems to get lost sometimes in the shuffle.
We spoke to a former student working with the SSMU to document the presence of security on campus, who herself had a run-in with security.
And I was walking onto campus right here, and I saw a couple of security guards inside the building here. I walked right in those doors. And they were armed. They had guns at their hips, which is very unusual here. I think maybe they were cash transit agents doing something with an ATM in there. This is something new. I hadn't seen it before, so I took a couple of pictures of them and started to put down my camera to go onto my meeting. And one of the security guards turned towards me and pointed and yelled at me that I should delete the photos that I had taken. And that I didn't have his permission to take them, and he said delete the photos, and I said no, thank you. This is public space, and I tried to turn to leave, but he was running towards me, and he grabbed my arm and dragged me over forcibly to the wall. And pinned me against the wall by my arm. Kept saying, "Give me your camera." He said he was going to break my camera at one point.
Could you please stop grabbing my arm?
Donne-moi ça. Okay, erase this picture. Film. Hey, je vais te le briser. Film, okay?
Please don't grab my arm and grab my camera.
Me.
Please let me go.
Oh, je cherche le truc, là. Just tell me why you take me in picture.
I am documenting the presence of security around campus. And I said, am I accused of breaking a law? Am I accused of breaking a McGill policy? Am I accused of breaking a particular law? No.
I don't speak English.
Well, you've been speaking English a little bit. Could someone translate maybe?
C'est vrai que c'est illégal ou pas? Parce que moi, je trouve pas en ligne. Pas le droit de prendre des photos. Si t'as pas mon consentement, t'as pas le droit de prendre des photos.
And he didn't answer. He just kept saying, "Give me your camera. You can't take photos of me." And eventually, another man, the building's porter, arrived. I was being pinned to the wall right by the door of his office. He said,
"Really, man? Oh, wait. Really?"
And I thought, finally, someone is here to help me point out that this is ridiculous. But then it turned out he was yelling at me, and he says, "You can't take photos of them."
No, you're not going anywhere. You don't do that to them. Are you kidding me, my friend? You just bought yourself a pack of trouble, man.
And he pushes me out of the way. He puts his hand on my arm, and he pushes me out of the way of the door so he can get to his office. And loudly calls McGill security.
Hey, you want to get someone to building 131, Porter's office now? Student filming the Garda as they're filling the bank machine, and Garda has them against the wall.
McGill security arrives. They don't ask any questions about what's happening. They just go straight for me and start asking me to identify myself. Show me your ID. What's your name? Are you a student here? They keep asking if I'm a student, and I say I'm not going to answer questions if you're not going to accuse me of breaking any rules. And he still didn't. And I asked him if he would tell me his name and show me his license.
Like you can't let it leave since you don't identify yourself.
I can't leave because I'm not identifying myself?
Yeah.
All right. Could I see your license?
No, you can't.
Okay.
McGill's website says that security agents should produce identification upon request unless there is an estimated risk to their safety.
Several more McGill security guards arrived. I think there were maybe 8 or 9 total by the end, and they were just all standing around, holding me against the wall. Even after the first guy let me go, they were holding me there. They were blocking the door. They told me that I couldn't leave, and one of them told me that I was under arrest, which didn't sound right because they weren't police. If you're not going to accuse me of breaking a law, even breaking a McGill policy, then I'm not going to answer questions.
Okay, cool. You can sit there like that then. We can wait for the cops to come and then they'll handle it since you want to be difficult.
And finally, the police show up. I've been held there for close to an hour. They say, "So what happened?" And I said, "Well, I'm taking some photos of security on campus." And they said, "Well, you're allowed to do that." We talked to the guards. We explained to them that you're not breaking the law. And my friend who was there asked if I was free to go, and the police said that I was. So I left as fast as I could.
We reviewed emails obtained through an access to information request revealing that a professor who witnessed the incident also filed a formal complaint about McGill's campus security. In a message to Denis Mondou, Associate Vice President of Facilities Management, the professor described the actions of campus security agents as inappropriate. Mondou responded, "I can confirm that they followed their protocols. The role of our agents in a situation like the one in December then becomes preventing escalation," he wrote. The professor pushed back.
You say the role of your agents is to prevent escalation, but it is clear from what I saw that they did the exact opposite of that. Rin Veith, a researcher, university instructor, and McGill alum who's following attacks on academic freedom on university campuses, spoke to us about the increased securitization at their alma mater.
What does security mean, right? Does it mean that all students will feel 100% happy, safe, secure, etc. on the university campus? I think that is unfortunately an impossible goal, right? There are times when something will happen that will be horrible or bad. That is not me saying that these things are good things, but simply that I think aiming for a sort of zero approach there is not possible. I also think, I mean, it's not so far in the recent past that there have been conversations about gender-based violence, sexual violence on university campuses. I think McGill and other universities across Quebec, the pushback there to students, faculty, staff. I was involved in supporting this when I was involved in the graduate TA union there, AGSEM. The reticence there, I think, makes me a little bit skeptical as to their framing of what safety and security mean. Safety and security to whom? What does this look like?
What would you suggest? How could the university move forward in a way that assures security, but that doesn't infringe on academic freedom?
It's been strange to me to see, again, a reticence to engage with students and to immediately move to bad faith.
And what's communication like with McGill administration?
There's no communication between students and Palestinian students and McGill administration. They just like to send out public emails to fearmonger, to try and scapegoat specific Palestinian groups. There's a complete refusal to engage with the students and their demands. And these repressive tactics, the injunction, all of those are evidence of that.
And I think there are absolutely, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be friction between what members of the administration want. Again, I think pushing them to be a little bit clearer with their goals is helpful. If their goal is no encampment, no protest on campus, that is a goal, but they need to be. I think it's important to name that. But I really do think that just talking to students is something that seems to be missing. I personally am increasingly worried about what's happening in terms of private security there. This concern is in a number of different directions. I think the sort of initial one, which to me is really important to name, but maybe not as front of mind for many folks, is we're seeing just increasing numbers of people on campus at a time when we know that the university is financially struggling, as are many universities across the province, right?
We did some calculations with McGill's security expenses and estimated that the university is on track to spend $2 million more this year than in 2023. This comes after they announced a deficit of $15 million in the 2023-2024 school year, and after laying off 60 staff last month. As students put pressure on the university to divest from companies with ties to Israel, some major donors want student protests for Palestine to go away. Sylvan Adams is one such donor. The businessman contributed $29 million to a new sports science institute at McGill, behind me here. Last year, Adams said on the Canadian Jewish News podcast that he was pressuring McGill's president to stop protests in solidarity with Palestine on campus.
I'm one of the largest donors ever to McGill University, and I have a very close relationship with the McGill principal, Deep Saini.
So what can you do as a philanthropist with your money at McGill, if anything?
As I said, by continuing to have these conversations so that he knows, and I'm not the only one from the Montreal Jewish community who is having, all of the big donors to McGill are having these conversations. And so he knows that the pressure is there. And if there is a new project that comes up, of course I'm going to look at it with a very skeptical eye until the problem is resolved.
While students and their administrations battle it out at McGill and Concordia, at Dawson College, faculty are pushing back against government intervention in the classroom. We spoke to Sarah Kendall, a teacher at Dawson and a member of the Jewish Faculty Network, about the investigation launched by Quebec's Ministry of Higher Education.
In December, Pascal Dary, who is the Minister of Higher Education, announced the launch of this very opaque investigation into Dawson and Vanier because of complaints that were sent directly to the ministry. So they had bypassed our college administrations, which have their own procedures for handling complaints. We've also learned that Dary tried to intervene directly in the content of some individual courses being taught at our CEGEPs because they featured Palestinian authors, asking our administrations questions about those courses and their content. And so this is really unprecedented. Like, the Minister of Higher Education doesn't usually look at our course outlines. These acts are a really clear violation of academic freedom and proper procedures. And I think it's really clear to people who have spoken up against the investigation that this isn't really about ensuring student safety, but about silencing Palestinian voices. One thing that's been really alarming to witness is the role of external organizations. So in this case, the Center for Israeli and Jewish Affairs, they played a really active role in soliciting and funneling complaints directly to the ministry. They also, pressured our colleges around some particular courses that were featuring Palestinian authors, and they were lobbying for this investigation. And when it was announced, they sort of took credit for, like, look. And so that's something that we've been concerned about. Dary, before she was the Minister of Higher Education, was on the board of CEJA from 2016 and 2022. The other concern that I think a lot of folks in Quebec are voicing is the violation of the principle of academic freedom, which Dary and this administration, has defended strongly when it came to teachers' right to say the N-word in the classroom. It is absolutely essential that teachers can engage in critical analysis in the classroom, especially, critical analysis of state violence without intervention from the state. When we talk about academic freedom, I think it's really important to point out that academic freedom doesn't mean that teachers can just say whatever we want. We're actually held to a higher standard in the classroom. It's just that standard is set by our colleagues, our departments, and our disciplines, experts in the subject matters that we teach, not by the government. So this is a really dangerous precedent. It's a really dangerous violation of academic freedom.
The ministry wrapped up its investigation and released a report at the end of June 2025.
The report, titled Administrative Investigation into the Management of Situations Involving Behavior That Could Reasonably Cause Concern for the Physical or Psychological Safety of Students, says that student associations and prayer rooms at Dawson and Vanier are contributing to tensions on campus in the broader context of Israel's war in Gaza.
According to the report, prayer rooms and CEGEPs go against Quebec's principle of secularism and, quote, contribute to a climate of radicalization, community withdrawal, and mutual distrust. It raises concerns about some student groups, saying that their mix of religious and cultural activities may cross that line too. As for the French course at Dawson that featured Palestinian authors, the investigation found that it met the requirements for French courses at English CEGEPs.
Meanwhile, Pivot has reported that Federal Member of Parliament Anthony Housefather personally contacted members of McGill's administration multiple times to pressure the university to stop student mobilization in support of Palestine.
I think just to be sure that while we're looking at our local context, and it's really important for us to really analyze it well and think really, really critically about what's happening here and to challenge what we think that's wrong here for sure, but is to not to lose sight of the thing that we are fighting for, which is freedom for people who are living under an almost 80-year occupation, who aren't free and who are being murdered at alarming rates. I think we've really lost a bit of attention sometimes for what's happening right now on the grounds in all of Palestine, but particularly in Gaza. And every single day, if you open the news, we see worse and worse stories happening. Hospitals are still being attacked, people are still being murdered, children are still being orphaned, losing their limbs, and it hasn't stopped. And so we want to kind of really do our work here, but not forget what we're fighting for.
some images that came out, I think, relatively early on in the encampment of young children in Gaza holding up signs that said thank you to the students, and they had like different names of different students at different universities that had encampments, and like one of them was McGill, and like how meaningful that was to know that people on the ground can see us and can know that we're not gonna forget them and that we're fighting really hard for them. So I think that's really moving and always important to come back to and remember, the reason why students in the West are protesting in the first place.
It's the first pro-Palestine, BDS motion to be ratified by our student union. This is a historic moment for the divestment struggle on campus.
Those advocating for an end to the occupation of Palestine have told us time and time again that this is history repeating itself. Student mobilization around the world was consequential in ending apartheid in South Africa.
This happened with South Africa and apartheid. That was such a huge part of helping that regime fall, was students in the West refusing to participate in that. So I think that happening again right now is so powerful.